Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, they say the key to staying young and feeling young is to try new things and to mix it up, not get stuck in your old ways. So I tried something new on Sunday. I watched an NFL game. It was the Bengals and the Rams. And we actually invited friends over to come over and watch the NFL game with us. And I thought, oh, well, this will be fun. And then when I got home from coaching a hockey tournament out of town in kind of mid-afternoon, I got home and thought, my wife said my phone's not working. My internet's not working. And it turns out there was a county-wide, not only Verizon service outage, but also the cable provider, Spectrum, also had a county-wide outage on the afternoon of the Super Bowl that stretched on for hours. And the service only came back a couple minutes after 6 o'clock. Just before the Super Bowl. I can take a sign from above. Obviously, someone in a significant place does not want me watching the NFL, and Tony, I plan to follow through on that.
I feel terrible for you that you did not get to experience any of the many, many hours of Super Bowl pregame shows. Tom, how could you possibly know who was even playing or what was going on if you didn't have 6 hours of pregame? You know none of the stories, the drama, the buildup of any of this game. How could you even function?
Yeah, it was like, was I calling them the St. Louis Rams for part of the game? Listen, I don't know. Maybe. Probably not. I'm aware enough to know that the NFL got sued by St. Louis, so they're not in St. Louis anymore. So I did know that. And our buddy Pat Murphy is a Rams fan for some stupid reason. So yes, I'm aware of it through him. But I feel like I missed out on a lot, and I'm like, where's the Bud Bowl? We're not doing the Bud Bowl anymore? What's going on?
Is this even America? And granted, the Bud Bowl really declined after the first, 3 Bud Bowls were outstanding. Tons of drama, good comedy, amazing CGI. But then it kind of went downhill. I think it kind of sold out and it got too commercial. And that was really disappointing about the whole Bud Bowl lineage, timeline, history. But Tom, let's talk about something happier than the Bud Bowl being no longer with us. Let's work on some listener questions. We've got some good questions. Still working through the last batch. Look like we will get done with these by tomorrow or tomorrow's show or the next show, which may or may not be tomorrow, but the next show. And I don't want to say hopefully something newsworthy will happen between now and then, because you never know exactly what kind of newsworthy is going to happen. So
news can go in a couple different directions, and some of them are good, and some of them are, I wish that hadn't happened.
But the good news is we are also getting to the point of spring football preview shows, and how in depth do we want to go in there? We could probably do some positional previews, and I've got some scheduling stuff that we can look at and work out. So there will be shows, don't worry. But first, we have today's show. So Tom, let's get to it.
All right, first one from @TLAG786-36326. Biggest question: do you sense any increased emphasis in the lead up to the workouts on quote toughness unquote? And are you hearing additional focus on Michigan due to the loss? Does the instability up there add to it or detract from it?
This is a question I don't know if it's another show or maybe it's Alex's show or Mark Rogers, where the idea, Tom, of additional focus on Michigan kind of strikes me. Like, I don't think there is additional focus. I just think there is now an accurate focus. Because before, yes, they spent a lot of time on Michigan, but nobody inside the building, nobody at the university, other than maybe some tenured professors, had any experience losing to Michigan. And now they all do. And so now it becomes a more realistic thing. It's more tangible. So I don't know that anything I don't know that the focus or anything they're going to be doing is all that different. Maybe they'll change it up. Who knows? But I think just the fact that you lost now gives you much more clarity on you never want to have that happen again. That's a terrible feeling. It's no longer just, well, we're Ohio State. We win this game. We're supposed to. Obviously, that's not the case. You have to go and make it happen. And so they didn't last year? And did that start in January, or did it just happen over the course of the season? You can have your own theories on that, but Tom, I don't think in terms of this portion of the question, do you see an additional focus? I just see a more accurate focus.
I think a more renewed focus, maybe. I mean, I don't know that they're going to spend. I mean, they literally spent time every day last year on the game. But to your point, it was a little bit more of a theoretical exercise because they had beaten Michigan every single year that any of these players were on campus. That even the DeMario McCall like super seniors, when they were getting recruited, all those guys had pretty much never lost to Michigan. Like there wasn't even like it was like this legend passed down through the ages. This like this oral tradition of the way thousands of years ago primitive societies would pass these legends down through the ages of the long time ago this terrible thing happened, and you hear it and it's kind of okay, some crackpot old man, all right, yeah. Well, now you just saw it. So now you've seen it in person. So now I think it has a little bit more significance to these guys, and the way Michigan handled things afterwards, and not necessarily being particularly subtle about the post game conversations and on the toughness side and all that kind of stuff. I think there will probably be a renewed a better understanding of, I don't know that it's going to be more emphasized in the building necessarily, but it'll be taken a little more personally by all those guys. So I think you're going to have a bigger impact on that piece next year. As far as the toughness piece, that's very hard to say. I mean, I think we've both probably heard that there's some changes being made sort of internally. They're not running the exact same winter workouts they ran last year. But it's always kind of hard to hear, to understand this time of year exactly how different that is. Because, when you talk to guys after winter workouts, everyone, it's always the hardest they've ever had to do it. And it's the most difficult thing they've ever had to do. And, it's like how every baseball player comes into spring training in the best shape of his life, to the point that it's like a joke that it's like, everyone's in the best shape of their life this year. This is the year that everyone has really put in the work. I know what we'll hear when we're talking to players a month from now about these winter workouts. I don't know specifically, how much more difficult, how much different stuff were they doing this year. We get to talk to Coach Mick, it feels like, about every other year. Mickey Marotti, the strength and conditioning coach. So I don't know, hopefully this is a year we get to talk to him and kind of get a sense for if they're trying to do some different stuff, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not.
I remember a few years back, more than a few now at this point, Urban Meyer said, they have to have the best off season or the best summer in the history of college football. And I remember thinking well, what good is hyperbole like that? And if it's not hyperbole, you're going to you're not going to have the best off season in the history of it's just, is there a middle high ground that you would be happy with? Because when you throw out stuff like that, and he was kind of famous for that, the amount of hyperbole, and it's like, how long can you hear that before it's just like it starts to mean nothing? But that that's not really regarding this question. It just struck me that so much of what we hear from coaches is it's beyond coach speak. It's what they say at that point, and it's just like, on Wednesday, I say this to the media, and on Tuesdays, I say this, and prior to camp, I say this. And what goes on inside the building, obviously, is much different. The last question here, does the instability up there add to it or detract from it? I don't think it matters in the least, because Michigan, after last year, could figuratively be an old lady walking across the street with a cane. And this year's version of the team is not, they'll run her over in a crosswalk. Like, they don't care how down you are, how beaten up you are, how dysfunctional you might be right now. That, I don't think it matters at all to them.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like this is one of those probably no mercy kind of years. And sometimes sometimes that can be like a distraction when you're coming in, you're trying to, it's like when you're going up to the plate trying to hit a home run,
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you're swinging so hard and you're squeezing the bat so tight, and you're like, I'm going to hit this ball into the third deck, and then, and that's a real good way to pop the ball straight up. So, maintaining that focus and discipline is going to be significant. And you wonder if a little bit of the juice is gone with Josh Gaddis gone, but don't worry, Jim Harbaugh talked too. So I have a feeling that there will be lots of conversations, keeping this in the baseball realm, lots of conversations centering around third base for the next 9 months or so. So it'll be, it's going to be fun. It'll be, I think there will be, not just for players, but also for fans and the students and everything else. I think there will be a renewed emphasis on that game because, you've watched your team beat the other team for literally a decade. And so, this is just, everyone takes it as their birthright that they're going to beat Michigan every year. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what? They can lose this game? So I think you'll have a little more renewed gusto around that game. So that'll be fun. I am genuinely looking forward to that game. I think that'll be, that should be a fun atmosphere is my thoughts on that game. Next one from Matt. Isaac McIntyre, which player or players is most likely to go from zero to hero, aka which player, in your opinion, is going to have a great season that not many people will see coming? And I feel like we've talked a little bit about these, this kind of question before, and it's like there are a couple classes of guys who kind of fit into this area. One is the true freshman who comes on, the Denzel Burke kind of, guy out of nowhere, which no one saw that coming. And, the person who came closest to seeing that coming was me last spring, of course, when I picked him as the first Buckeye to lose his black stripe, and Tony mocked me endlessly. And then, hey, eventually I win all these things, and eventually I'm always right. But sometimes it takes Tony longer to figure these things out, so it's okay. So, so you've got your true freshman who comes out of nowhere like Denzel Burke. Travion Henderson was, I think, a little more widely expected to. He was someone I think we both talked about. Even Tony saw that one coming, is I guess what I'm saying. I got to remember to try and put this up in a 2-box so you can just see you just getting madder and madder on the other side instead of it's just me talking. I probably won't remember. That's okay. Just know that he's mad. That's the important thing. So you've got, you have the true freshman that comes on immediately who makes an immediate impact. That's kind of one class of guy. You've got the guy who's coming back from injury. So, are we counting Josh Proctor as that kind of guy this year potentially? Are we counting Tyler Friday as that kind of guy this year, potentially? I think Tyler Friday might be my answer to this question. And then you just have the guys who are buried on the depth chart, and then they finally get a chance to play. And, is that Julian Fleming this year? Is that Micah Egbuka this year? Is that Marvin Harrison this year? I mean, guys who have been behind people. Last year, we probably would have been talking about a lot of the linebackers because of, they had just been buried on the depth chart. And sometimes that works out great. And then, Steel Chambers was kind of that guy last year. And then sometimes those guys punch out in the middle of the game and don't come back. So this is a little difficult to predict, but I think my immediate, instinct is someone like Tyler Friday, who has an opportunity. I think everyone's just kind of forgotten about Tyler Friday, but I think he has an opportunity to be in that rotation at defensive end and potentially make a pretty significant impact. Other than that, I think you're looking at linebacker somewhere, because I think with the linebackers, I don't know that anyone is really written in pen. Is it Cody Simon? Is it Tommy Eichenberg? Is it Steel Chambers? Chip Trainum? Could Chip Trainum come in from another program and have the kind of breakout season that Steel Chambers had last year, but maybe have even a little bit more opportunity because he's not switching over the summer. He's switching in, coming in now. So I think I would go with one of those guys potentially as my answer there. What about you?
Well, I think it's interesting because you're going to see some linebackers put up some numbers in the backfield. That's one of the things Jim Knowles' defense does. But I don't know that they're going to play just one middle linebacker. So I still think Tommy Eichenberg and Cody Simon both play. Steel Chambers, obviously not a zero. I don't even think we can consider Marvin Harrison and Mecca Egbuka, Julian Fleming. Maybe, and it's terrible to say this, maybe you can consider Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka zeros. At this point, I don't think you can consider Marvin Harrison that, because I think we saw what he did in the Rose Bowl. That's what I expect him to do during the season. Not 3 touchdowns every game, obviously, between 1 and 2 every game. Tom, I'm going to go a little bit out of the box here because I'm going to say Zach Harrison. And now he's been a multi-year starter. He's a well-known player, but you have a large segment of the fan base that has written him off and ready to see somebody else. So they consider him a zero. They want more Jack Sawyer, more JT Tuimoloau, more Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, whatever. I'm saying this is the year where he could become everything that everybody thought he was going to be. And if that's what happens, if he becomes 12 and a half sacks based on his average yearly output of like 2 sacks, then that's going from 0 to hero. And not that he is a zero, obviously, but I just think we've done this kind of question almost, I think this is like the third time in the last however many shows, and the last time I wanted to mention Zach Harrison, and I didn't get a chance to. So obviously, yes, well known, but sometimes being well known isn't exactly a great thing. Just ask every baseball umpire ever.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely not a zero. He's and do people not see it coming? Have people given up on him? I don't know.
Yes, I think a lot of people.
You think they have? I mean,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I maybe this is my skewed view. I certainly have not given up on the idea of Zach Harrison having a potentially big game.
Do you read the internet, Tom? Are you even on the internet?
I do my best to be on it as little as possible, but I do suffer from some indirect exposure at times. Yes, I mean he's someone who I think is poised for a breakout year, but I don't know if he necessarily fits this exact question. But I understand what you're saying. All right, next one from at Grover the Rover 1. Biggest test on the schedule for Ohio State outside of Notre Dame and Michigan. I mean, they have to go to Penn State this year, right? I think that probably has to be the answer.
Yeah, that was going to be my quick answer as well, because they don't go on the road much this year, 4 times, and they don't go on the road until October 8th, which is insane. And then they don't go on the road again until that Penn State game, Halloween weekend. So, I think they're fine-ish against Wisconsin at home. Certainly not as dangerous as playing at Penn State on the road. And really, that's generally the most dangerous game for Ohio State every 2 years is that road game at Penn State, because it's just it's really difficult. It's one of the toughest places to play in the nation. I mean, Auburn couldn't even win there this past season. So it's not nothing.
And they're so good they haven't fired their head coach yet, somehow, against all odds. I mean, the road schedule next year is really not too bad. It's at Michigan State, which I feel like Michigan State to me this year is just kind of a shrug emoji. Like, Mel Tucker pulled a rabbit out of his hat last year and had a remarkably good year. Can he do that again? Is he going to pull another Heisman caliber running back out of the portal? Like, maybe not. And
Jalen Berger out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, but I mean, are you? Would you like to bet against Wisconsin correctly evaluating a running back? I don't know that I'm betting against that. So and I mean, like, the productivity in the offense just looked totally different when they replaced Jalen Berger with now I'm going to blank on his name.
Braylon Allen.
Braylon Allen, yes, the very young true freshman last year. That looked like a totally different team. Like that just, I think Jalen Berger will be fine. I don't think Jalen Berger will be Kenneth Walker the fourth. So that will probably not, he will probably not be quite the spiritual successor to last year's team. So that's Michigan State. That's the first one. Second one's at Penn State. Third one is at Northwestern, which Northwestern is another team that's kind of like, you assume your brain sort of just like auto fills in. Well, Northwestern was bad last year, so they're going to be good this year. And I don't know that that's necessarily going to be true. I think people are a little skeptical about Northwestern and whether they really have the horses to have one of those bounce back seasons where they get to Indianapolis, or at least are like an 8-4 team that everyone hates playing. That's a team that I don't think the transfer portal era is going to be great for Northwestern, because just academically, they can't necessarily bring in all the people that they would want to, just because of the academic requirements there. And, so you're going to lose some people. They lost a safety, I think, who was a pretty highly touted safety, for example.
Brandon Joseph.
Yeah, and you're not necessarily going to be able to replace those people the way that other schools might be able to replace them. So, we'll see what Northwestern does. You can kind of grade them incomplete, and then at Maryland is the last one. Like that, unless you want to really try and convince me that Michigan State is going to be another, New Year's Six team this year, which I don't, if Mel Tucker can do it, God bless him, he's going to earn that contract, but I don't know that I necessarily see it. So, yeah, it's either Wisconsin at home, which you get them early at home off of a couple non-power teams. So we have, you can really just focus on Wisconsin, and and then you're not going to Madison. Other than that, Iowa at home, Iowa in Columbus is not the same thing as Iowa in Iowa City. Indiana is going to be terrible again, and we've excluded Notre Dame and Michigan because of the construction of the question. So, yeah, I think the answer is Penn State, and if you want to tell me, well, not Penn State, that's too obvious, then the answer is Wisconsin, but there really are not that many really legitimately concerning games on the schedule this year, and you start looking at some of those preseason computer projections, like the SP Plus rankings. It's like Ohio State might be substantially better than everyone on their schedule this year.
Yeah, that Iowa game, they have a bye week before it, so
yeah,
one of the 3 or 4 toughest games on the schedule, and 4 or 5 and toughest, and they get the week off to prepare for the Hawkeyes. So
yeah, and just to go through SP Plus real quick, Ohio State is. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at last year. So never mind. I'm going to have to circle back. I pulled up the wrong one. I pulled up the postseason, not the preseason projections. I'll pull those up later. But Ohio State's got a pretty significant talent advantage this year against everyone else they're going to play. Next one from @BoomDude111 LOL. Fantastic name. How bad is Michigan getting beat this year? I'm saying 5 touchdown gap minimum.
Minimum is that's a statement. Now I can see 5 touchdowns. I don't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many, many, many ways to completely demoralize a team without necessarily blowing them out. Because I always go back to the 2007 Michigan game where the Wolverines could do nothing, and when Ohio State won that game was like that. Was that like 14-3 or something like that?
It was 14-3. It was 7-3 at halftime, and then I think Beanie Wells had a 60-yard touchdown right at the start of the second half, and it was like
that was it.
It was like 2 minutes into the second half, and it was just like, oh, the game is literally over already. How about that?
Because Chad Henne had a bum shoulder, and really that offense, you just feel so bad for so many of the players on that team. Chad Henne, Mike Hart, Jake Long, all came back to beat Ohio State as seniors. Had such difficulties. Entered in 2004. Didn't beat Ohio State. 2005 had them at home, lost it in the final minute, and then in 2006, that one of the greatest games of all time, and just couldn't get it done. And they were such great Wolverines and great friends and great family that they all could have been picks 1, 2, and 3. Mike Hart could have been the number 3 overall pick. Chad Henne, number 2 overall pick. I don't have any doubts. Jake Long obviously finished the number 1 next year. But they're like, no, let's put the NFL on hold, come back for that 2007 season, and it just didn't quite work out for them. And then they all went on to their very stellar, all of their NFL careers. I think Mike Hart is still playing in the NFL. I'm not sure.
In this scenario where Henne and Hart are both top 3 picks, did the Browns have multiple top 3 picks that year, or?
Tom, that's not cool, man. It's funny. It's not cool. But so there are many different ways to demoralize and blow somebody out, and it doesn't necessarily have to be more than 11 points to do it. How bad is it going to be this year? Tom, I don't want to get into like throwing out guarantees or throwing out big numbers, but if there's going to be a year, it would have been 2020. If there's going to be another year where Ohio State is going to want to put up a big number. And seeing what they did in 2018, 2019, putting up unseen numbers before, and then that 2020 game, I go ahead and throw that minimum 5 touchdowns, and I'm saying minimum 63 points for Ohio State in that one. Now this one, Michigan's going to put up a much better fight. But if we're talking minimums, for me right now, I don't want to go beyond like 14 points until I see something, but also this could be. There are going to be many Buckeyes on this team that want to make this a 5-touchdown minimum game, obviously.
Yeah, and I think you might lump Ryan Day in that group to a certain degree. I don't know if it's 5 touchdowns, but I think Ryan Day would probably
7.
I think Ryan Day would probably not. I don't think he's looking to ease off the throttle early next year if he's in that position. I do. The fact that game is the week before the Big Ten championship game, and you're looking at probably a rematch with Wisconsin or something like that the week after that, the worst thing you could do would be, you're up by, fill in the blank on the score, whatever you want to make the score in your wildest hopes and dreams. It's 38-10 in the fourth quarter. And CJ Stroud's still out there because Ryan Day is mad about Jim Harbaugh's third base comments. And, he's going to throw one more into the end zone just to really, stick it to him. And, and then you get hurt. And, you saw Justin Fields get hurt kind of late in the Michigan game in 2019, got that knee injury. I think they're going to err on the side of caution with some of that stuff. And, you may see Kyle McCord in there bombing away a little longer than you would have otherwise if they're in that position. But, the talent gap between these teams is significant, but this is not Ohio State versus Akron. This is, I don't think have we talked about the preseason SP Plus projections yet? Because Michigan was like of all the schools, Michigan was the one I was most surprised at where they were. Michigan's 4th in the country coming into the year in preseason SP Plus. They are 5th in the country in offense, 19th in the country in defense. Ohio State is 1st and 11th. Now, Ohio State is 9 points and some change ahead, and you give them another field goal for home field, so 12 points. So, winning by a couple touchdowns, I think that's a reasonable expectation. That's sort of kind of what the computer numbers are saying right now. And there's a long way to go between now and November, and someone will get hurt, or someone will transfer, or the SP Plus doesn't know that Michigan's changing both coordinators, and they don't know who they're replacing those coordinators with, and so there's a lot that goes into those numbers that isn't necessarily that's hard to quantify just in a like national computer metric right now. But yeah, two touchdowns I think is a reasonable expectation for an outcome, and I would assume the early line on that game is probably going to be Ohio State minus 10, 12, something like that, I would guess. So that's kind of in line with what the expectation is going to be. You beat decent teams by 5 touchdowns a lot less frequently than you might think. Like they did it to Michigan State this year, but you go back over the years, it's like how many times have they just really you can remember the times that they do it because it stands out, like 59-0 over Wisconsin. Like that really stands out in your mind. 56-7 against Michigan State this year. That stands out in your mind. There are a lot of them. And they did a 63-14 against Penn State, but that was kind of in the wake of the scholarship sanctions, and you don't do that to good teams all that often. So, 35 I think is a little aggressive. It's not that it's not possible, but they haven't beaten them by 35 since 2008, right? Was it 42-7 that year? Because they've had. You've had games that have felt like blowouts, 62-39, but that's only 23 points. That's not 35. And 56-27, so that's 29 points. You're still a touchdown shy of 35. Again, those were blowouts. So 35 points is a lot, as I think my takeaway here. But if you want to tell me they're going to beat them by multiple scores next year, yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing to go into the season thinking.
John, what does your SB Plus think about Michigan losing their top tackler, their 2 top defensive ends, that sort of thing? Do you know how many sacks the leading returning sacker had last year for Michigan?
Oof, is it 3? 2.5. 2.5. Wow.
By Taylor Upshaw, who actually he may also be leaving because he was a senior. So,
yeah. Ooh, boy.
Yeah, they had 34 sacks on the season, and 25 of them were Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo.
And they were, we talked about, I know, the returning production at one point, and they were like 114th or something in the nation in returning production on defense. And they had a really good defense last year, but they're losing a lot of people. And again, what the computer system can't take into account is, wow, they were really, really great on defense last year. But, the computer system knows that the good players are gone. The computer system does not know that Mike McDonald is also gone. So, and this is the time of year when everyone's new hires are going to fix everything, and it's going to be incredible. And, Josh Gaddis, who was a genius, who was the genius behind everything, goes and takes the Miami job, and then, he was actually just the figurehead, and Matt Weiss was the guy who was actually the genius, and then Matt Weiss is just the co-OC and not actually the OC. So, I mean, if he was actually the genius behind it and he's just a co-OC, imagine how smart the other guy must be. Like, I mean, it's going to be like, whatever the level above Mensa is, they're going to be looking down at Tom Herman from that offensive coaching staff room. And, again, the computer systems have a lot of trouble accounting for the fact that stuff like, how's that Cade McNamara, JJ McCarthy dynamic going to work out next year? That's like, maybe that'll be okay, and maybe it won't. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this that some of those some of those systems can't necessarily account for this far out. Once you get 6-7 weeks into the season, I put a lot more stock into that stuff. But right now, it's like, I mean, this is at least an interesting and completely objective measure nationally that kind of gives you a sense that, Michigan is probably not going to fall completely off a cliff next year.
It just seems strange that they wouldn't input information that they have into it.
I think the I've heard the guy who runs that is Bill Connolly. He works for ESPN.
He hates his early season
right.
numbers. Like, he's always like,
yeah. Well, it's based
almost apologetic.
It's based a lot on the recruiting rankings and that kind of stuff, and then that sort of gets phased out throughout the year. I think he basically drops 10% every week. So it's like right now it's 100% recruiting rankings and returning production, that kind of stuff, and then the returning stuff and the recruiting stuff. After a week or two, that's down to 90% and then 80%, and you start incorporating, because you don't want to overreact to the early week, because that's how you get to, Notre Dame beat Texas, and therefore Notre Dame's going to be great, and it's like, wait, no, they were. Turns out they went 5-7 that year or whatever. Like, you don't want to overreact to the early weeks too much, but it does get a lot more dialed in as the season goes along.
Right now, Tom, yes or no? Michigan wins at Iowa. That's their first road trip of the season, Saturday, October 1st next season.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling down. Iowa's 26th. I'm going to say yes, because if Michigan has an explosive offense, and I think they should have, you get Ronnie Bell back. That's a big piece of that offense. And the line should be pretty good, and you've got some running back talent there. I think they're going to be able to score enough that, how many points do you have to score to beat Iowa and Iowa City? 24? 27? I think they're going to have enough talent on offense that they should be able to do that. I don't think it'll necessarily be pretty, but I'm going to say yes, they beat Iowa in Iowa City.
Right now, I feel like that's an Iowa win. That's just one of those where I almost initially chalk up that for a win for anybody except for Ohio State, because they have so much more talent than everybody else in the Big Ten. But I just, when I'm, I'll put the spreadsheet out, and I haven't done it for a few years, but you go through all of the games. This is a win, this is a loss. I usually give Iowa a lot of credit early until they end up losing to Indiana State or Ball State and the Miami of Ohio in the first 2 weeks. And then it's like, okay, well, it was fun while it lasted. But you never know with Iowa, and they've got their own quarterback issue. Maybe the winner is the team that figures out their quarterback situation first, and then has that guy to ride.
Well, Michigan's quarterback situation is a little different than Iowa's quarterback situation, because Michigan has 2 and Iowa might have 0. So those are kind of different quarterback problems that you can have. And you go into Michigan, you go through Michigan's schedule, and we've talked about this ad nauseum already, and we still have 7,000 shows to go before the season starts. But Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, Maryland. That's the first month of the season. That's September. So polish that September. Get your September Heisman polish out. You're going to need it. And then they go to Iowa October 1st. So that's, kind of your first challenge. Do they take that first month, and are they really just kind of working some stuff out and figuring out who goes where and all that kind of stuff? And then you kind of unleash everything for that, because they open October with at Iowa, at Indiana, home for Penn State, off week, home for Michigan State. So And then November is relatively light for them. At Rutgers, home for Nebraska, home for Illinois, and then at Ohio State. I mean, other than at Ohio State, I don't know that they're an underdog in any of those games, and that may be more of a function of who else is on that schedule. But what does Penn State look like on October 15th? There are a couple ways that season could go.
Mm-hmm.
And at Iowa is a little bit of a question. I think Indiana. I mean, I'm not going to completely bury Indiana yet, but I'm going to need to see something out of Indiana to make me think something other than 2020 is a wild historical outlier.
Yeah, I can very easily see Michigan at 11-0, 10-1, something like that coming into the Ohio State game. I can also see those first 4 games, as you said, Colorado State, Hawaii, UConn, Maryland, Cade McNamara looking outstanding. So there's no quarterback controversy, but we know like he's probably not the guy that can get it done for you. So at some point, does he cost them a game that he shouldn't because they don't go with the guy who can take them further and who has the most potential? And I still we'll see where that thing goes. I don't know how much longer JJ McCarthy can like it. Obviously, if he sticks around next year, then Cade McNamara will be a 5th-year senior in 2023. Do you think you're finally going to beat him out now? Like they're going to finally give you that shot now, or is this when you finally? Do you have your Michigan degree after this season? No, not yet. But that's just a long time for somebody like him to. And it's I don't know if it's made better or worse by the fact that you get to play. Like you get the taste, and you're like, I'm doing well. Why can't I start? Or if you're just like, well, you're not even good enough to play, you're like, yeah, you're right. I'm not even good enough to play because I don't get in the game, so obviously I'm not good enough. But you tell him that you're good enough to play, but we're not going to play as much. And so how long do you actually stick around for that?
Yeah, that's and the sort of the default answer on young quarterbacks is 6 to 18 months less than you'd expect. So I don't, I mean, I wonder if Michigan's going into this season thinking we have to make a decision. Like I don't know that the status quo can hold there. And if the I would assume, and maybe this is my personal bias from last season when I kept saying this, I think you have to have it be JJ McCarthy because I think he gives you a much higher ceiling, and now he's not a true freshman. So if you get to the point where JJ McCarthy comes to you and says, has the "can you tell me I'm going to be the starting quarterback" conversation, I think you kind of have to say yes. It's because if you say no and then he leaves, then it's like, well, okay, you've got Cade McNamara again for a year, probably 2, because it's not like he's going to be a real, he's not some future first round pick. And unless, I mean, I was going to make a Tom Brady, Drew Henson comp. So, I mean, maybe this is maybe, I don't know who. NFL teams spend millions of dollars and months and months and months and get this wrong like 50% of the time. So I'm not going to tell you I am 100% certain that Cade McNamara will not be Tom Brady, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to be Tom Brady. So I don't know. Maybe this ends with JJ McCarthy getting signed by the Yankees. I don't know.
Can he even field at third base? Not that Drew Henson could. I guess it didn't really matter either. But let's see what the old Yankees do, but I don't know that that's the answer for anybody there. Tom, anything else before we get out of here on this episode?
I think we're good.
Good. I think we are good. So that will do it for today. I want to thank you all for joining us. Don't forget about the rest of the shows on the network. Tom's got the Morning Scoop every day. You got Alex Around the Oval once a week-ish. You got the Gives in the Bank podcast covering recruiting. Kevin Noon's Big Me Kickoff, which does like once or twice a week. At his leisure, but it's also for you people. So give that a listen, give it a watch on YouTube as well. And all of our podcasts, obviously on YouTube at youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. So thank you for joining us, and we will talk to you all later.